Once upon a time in a small town, there lived Mr. Toop, a hench and beefy teacher at the local high school. Mr. Toop was known for his stern demeanor, booming voice, his hat, and impressive physique. However, beneath his tough exterior, Mr. Toop had a soft spot for his ex-wife, Mrs. Tindal. Mrs. Tindal, a graceful and elegant RC car, had moved on from their failed marriage and started teaching at the same school as Mr. Toop. She radiated intelligence and warmth, captivating the hearts of both students and colleagues alike. One day, as Mr. Toop was patrolling the school corridors, he stumbled upon Mrs. Tindal engaged in a conversation with Mr. Janilil, the charming English teacher. A pang of jealousy surged through Mr. Toop's chest, igniting a determination to win back the love of his ex-wife. With his muscles flexed and a new resolve in his heart, Mr. Toop sought the guidance of his close friend, Ms. Surly, the cheerful and wise school music teacher. Ms. Surly listened attentively to Badenary and Mr. Toop's tale of longing and offered her sage advice. "You must show Mrs. Tindal your tender side, Mr. Toop," said Ms. Surly, her eyes sparkling with empathy. "Kindness and understanding can soften even the hardest of hearts." Encouraged by her words, Mr. Toop set out to prove himself to Mrs. Tindal. He wrote heartfelt letters expressing his regrets and acknowledging his mistakes. He poured his emotions onto the pages, hoping that his sincerity would touch her soul. Meanwhile, Mr. Janilil, intrigued by the unfolding love story, decided to step aside and give Mr. Toop a fair chance to win back Mrs. Tindal's heart. Recognizing the depth of Mr. Toop's feelings, he gracefully bowed out, realizing that true love sometimes required sacrifice. On a sunny afternoon, in the school's tranquil garden, Mr. Toop mustered up the courage to approach Mrs. Tindal. With shaky hands and a voice filled with genuine emotion, he presented her with a bouquet of her favorite flowers and poured his heart out. "I know I've made mistakes, Mrs. Tindal," Mr. Toop confessed, his voice filled with a mix of vulnerability and hope. "But I've learned from them, and I've changed. I still love you, and I want nothing more than to make you happy. Will you give me another chance?" Mrs. Tindal, deeply moved by Mr. Toop's heartfelt plea, felt her heart soften. She saw the sincerity in his eyes and recognized the effort he had put into redeeming himself. A smile tugged at the corners of her lips as she replied, "Mr. Toop, perhaps love deserves a second chance. Let's start anew and see where our hearts lead us." And so, surrounded by the beauty of the blooming flowers, Mr. Toop and Mrs. Tindal embarked on a journey of rediscovering their love. The school rejoiced at their reunion, witnessing the power of forgiveness and the triumph of true love. In the halls of the high school, Mr. Janilil and Ms. Surly exchanged knowing glances, silently acknowledging their small but significant roles in bringing happiness to the lives of Mr. Toop and Mrs. Tindal. Love had triumphed, reminding everyone that sometimes, even the toughest of hearts can be softened by a genuine and sincere connection.